Good evening. It's 7 o'clock, so I'll call to order the workshop meeting of the Downers Park District for March 6th, 2025. 18, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Bender.
Here.
Mr. Dahlstrom.
Here.
Mr. Katsula.
Here.
Mr. Munt.
Here.
Ms. McDonald.
Next item, as we historically do, is our pledge of allegiance. So I'll invite anyone who would like to join us. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have some changes to the agenda then.
Excuse me. Yes, we have two changes. One is to remove A5, which is the next item. And then under B, add number 2, correspondence.
We'll move to next item. B, items B is communications person recognition of visitors.
No online visitors.
So we'll move on to item number 2.
Yes, the board should have received some correspondence from a foundation for individual rights and expressing some concern about our First Amendment policies. I'm gonna turn it over to Eric, a little bit of background where we are today with that.
Thank you, Bill. If you recall, last, I believe it was April or May, we updated our park use policy to include some additional First Amendment right activities within it. This came from some legal presentations that we actually attended at the IAPD IPRA conference. It was discussed by the directors, discussed with legal counsel at Ansel Link, who has done this before with other communities. And then it was presented to the board at that time. It went into place specifically for about 8 areas, I believe it was, where there were facilities, where there was fields or courts, where there was the concert location where activities may be taking place. And it could have some additional concerns amongst the two groups, the one that may want to speak their First Amendment rights and those that are enjoying the recreation activity, whether it's a baseball game, whether it's a concert or whatnot. So that rule was put into place back in May. Over the summer, relatively, it went pretty well. We did not have any incidents. However, yesterday, Bill and I found out that a letter was sent to the village from this Foundation of Individual Rights and Expression, expressing concern over that policy and how it affects people's First Amendment rights. They had sent it to the village originally thinking it was a village park. It has since been corrected and I believe sent to the board, now knowing that it's a park district facility. What you have before you is this letter. You also have a response to a couple of newspaper writers. We were contacted by a couple of newspaper writers about this today. We asked Dirk Price, our legal counsel, to please respond on our behalf. You have our 2 flyers that we created last year. This was to go on the signs that we have out in our McCollum and official locations. We wanted to make sure to be open to the public about this and try to explain it firsthand so that it was transparent. And then you finally have our policy that was approved last year. Where we're currently at with this, as I said, we found out about this yesterday. We did not see this letter until today. This has been passed along to Dirk Price and Ansel Glink, our legal counsel. Dirk has responded to the newspaper article, newspaper writer. He is also going to respond to this group on behalf of us. As of right now, there's not much more follow-up we can give as it's kind of in the process. However, as we get more information from our legal counsel, we'll be happy to share that to the board. In addition, Dirk will be present at our next meeting. That will be an opportune time to give an update on this as well. Any questions? Thank you.
Move on then to discussion items. First one is the ergonomics policy, Bill.
This is something was part of our SMART goals with Derma. So I'll turn it over to Dave.
Thank you. So every year we have to develop a SMART goal, or at least one, maybe a couple with Derma. The one that we identified this year was to actually have an ergonomics policy. We've done things in the past. We had an assessment of all the workstations 5 years ago. Nothing's just formalized. So this is the first step is creating an actual policy. The second step is then we will conduct more assessments of individual workstations. We'll get that done prior to budget time because then if we need to make any adjustments for 26, we can budget for that. And then the third portion is between, say, summer and the conclusion of 25, we want to focus on analyzing individual job tasks, again, from an ergonomics perspective to make sure, are they doing it correctly? Are there anything we need to correct on that? So the policy that you have was actually based on a template provided by Perderma. If the board's in concurrence, we will bring that back on the March 20th meeting for formal approval of the safety manual is actually where this policy will be included. And then after that, we'll of course send out the updated manual to all the staff.
I have nothing else.
No questions, sir.
Only question I had is do we have it defined? How an employee will request additional resources or resources available?
Well-
And is there a budget to support the ergonomics policy upon request by employees?
So we would incorporate that in. Right now, I'd say there's minimal funding. We have some money that's not, that's general, that's there for earmarked for multi-purpose, but our thought was, again, that's why we want to get this done before the budget process. So we can put a request process in during the budget and then ensure that we have the funding available. Now, we're probably gonna have some restrictions. Obviously, we can't have, if every single employee in the district wants a stand-up desk, that may not be feasible, or at least all at once.
Yeah.
So we may have to phase some of this stuff in.
Yeah, but that dovetails right into my second question is with the request by an employee, is it required that they provide a note from a doctor?
No,
No,
And we've had requests in the past, looking at Trish, but we've purchased some of these different items just out of our general office supply. I think it's called office supplies.
Some of them, like the footrests that people
Yep.
have under their
Yeah.
desk,
And
different.
also the MR&R for like chairs and stuff.
Right. The wrists and different things like
Yeah.
that. So it's not something we haven't done. We just haven't had a formal process.
Well, to the commissioner's point, though, I think John brings it, what's the difference between this and an ADA request or an accommodation? So let's say if somebody with back pain, they can certainly request a chair through Mary, right? And that's a whole different animal. Right. Okay.
That would take precedence over this. This would more likely be some kind of system, maybe Chris could develop, where it's a request system that you could submit requests for items like this and base it on what we're able to budget each year. I know we do have some safety dollars in there that could go towards it.
So this is separate, and thank you for asking the question, Commissioner, because this is separate then from an ADA accommodation.
yeah,
Hold it.
yeah, two separate issues.
So this is just for better seating, better lighting.
Right, or if somebody's out in the field, for example, that's why we want to analyze the job tasks, to make sure they're not doing something that's also that's repetitive, that may cause, some issues as well. So completely different than ADA. And if we had a doctor's note for an ergonomics request, of course,
That's a separate path.
yes.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, I'm very much supportive of this policy and I'm very much supportive of the requests. Speaking from experience, I have seen the requests pile on very quickly. Once a single individual makes a request for a specific chair and a stand-up desk, it becomes the creme de la creme and everybody wants one. And therefore you can run into budget concerns. So that's why I'm asking the question, because I think we all know that this can't be a significant expense.
Mhm.
I think the average cost of a standing desk probably is around $700.
Right.
And we've had, I can't remember, but we did have an employee who's not with us anymore. We got the thing that went on top of the desktop
Yep.
that you could lift up.
Yep.
And that's how we accommodated that.
The very desk.
Yeah, and it was really a fitness. It wasn't an ADA request. It was a I don't want to sit all the time, my health, fitness.
Yeah.
We've even done some of that with chairs. We used to have some really bad chairs. I think I had 3 different hand-me-down ones my first 5 years.
Yeah.
So we've gotten more of a process of replacing those, making sure that they're supportive to the type of position the individuals need to be in.
Yeah, I think maybe do we just want to have some sort of policy that we will receive requests, but they're not guaranteed.
Take it into account, yeah.
Take into account.
We have other policies that said as the budget permits, so we could put
I'll make sure that that gets in there.
that in there and that allows us.
Great, thank you.
And our intent is when we do the assessments of the workstations, that probably that first one will be conducted by Paderma. And then they will train staff so that going forward, we can, we can do it internally without having to rely on Paderma to do it for us.
Absolutely. And I think based upon the analysis, we'll be able to identify the employees that are at the most risk.
Correct.
And we have an opportunity to perhaps proactively have conversations with them about what their needs are to mitigate said risks.
Right.
Any other questions or thoughts for Dave? Memo of understanding with the historical society.
Yeah, actually, it's the historical, we've been starting the process of updating all of our agreements, but in this situation, the Historical Society actually reached out to us or we reached out to them. They've had a change in some leadership. And then, so the new leadership was reading the agreement, which is extraordinarily old. It's almost historic in itself. Dave and I had a really good meeting with their leadership. We have a great relationship. Everything is working just fine. There's just things in there that were old and outdated, and particularly on technologies and different things like that. So out of that conversation, Dave updated the agreement. We're sending that back to them, but we wanted to get any feedback from the board, and Dave or I'd be happy to answer any questions on it, but it's really kind of housekeeping and updating.
I had just a couple of comments, if you wouldn't indulge me for a moment. First, under communications, will the park district always have a recreation supervisor role?
We will.
Okay.
That is a very standard title.
I figured that was the answer. I came to that same conclusion. I just wanted to
Yep.
ask the question because
And
anytime,
if we did, we can always update this.
yeah. But the old agreement is now 15 years old, is what I was asking, right? The question.
Well, like my title was the wrong title.
Yes.
It was an old title.
Yeah. There's always that, there's always that trick when you include roles within a legal document.
And that's why, if you notice in there, we now have language for it to be revisited in more timely fashion, so that it doesn't become that.
My second question was on section 7, historical collections. All right, well, I'm curious.
Go ahead.
So the Historical Society and the Park District are claiming equal ownership of the collections at the museum. It feels to me like we need to perhaps place a value. The collections be equally owned.
So two-part answer to that.
Yeah,
So that was one of the ones that we, they had requested, and that, I talked with Bill, we need to flush that out a little bit further as far as who owns, and that's the hard part. You start going back, I asked Felicia at the museum to look at the files and see what was in there prior to this one, and of course, there's not a lot of, but it's my understanding, the way it was explained to me is that prior, so when we merged in the 80s, I think it was 87, at that point, anything that was owned by the Historical Society prior to coming together, still owned by them. Anything going forward is owned by the Park District. So that we need to clarify a little bit more, that language there. We've had conversations with Paderma as far as trying to assess a value on the artifacts in the museum, and it's, they've kind of come up with a balloon or a balloon rate to cover everything because it is so hard to put each item what a value is.
Yes, and that's where I was going to go next is then how are we determining what the insurance coverages on said collections. We don't
We're
know.
just working with Dermot to come up with a number, because it's all irreplaceable.
Yeah.
And what might be an important document to Downers Grove probably doesn't have any value to anyone else. So
Sure,
it's always hard to do that, and it's not like we can go out and replace that stuff, but we want to, something dramatic happened and we lost part of that collection, we would want it insured for something so that we can continue. I mean, the structures are insured like normal, the property, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's just really hard on those to put a value to what they
and
are.
we've got language in here about utilization
Correct.
of the artifacts and collections.
And I actually got an email tonight before the meeting from the president. And just we're clarifying, and she said that one of their biggest concerns, and exactly what you just said, is they want to make sure that they can use some of the artifacts for their use if they're doing their own display or if they're doing some fundraising and things like that. And absolutely, that is our intent, is let them share that. So we'll flush that out a little bit more. I have a phone call set up with her just to make sure that we're on the same page, because there's so many previous documents that, they don't have that information either.
Yeah.
So we'll just make sure it's clear.
Yeah, that makes me feel better, because then as you read down into the dissolution segment, right, it talked about coverage of debt,
Mhm.
and then it carves out no Park District artifacts or collections can be used to cover debt in the event of a dissolution. And I just thought it might be important to clarify whose is whose.
The other item related to the museum and collection, but not owned by either us or Historical Society, is the fire truck that we have in there.
Yes.
That is actually owned by the village. But once Dave finishes this, I've asked him to follow up with the village. Not sure there's even any agreement or documentation that I have seen. But to follow up with that and then maybe get some sort of memorandum of understanding with the village on that as well, that probably could get some sort of a value on it, because there is a market for that item.
Yeah.
So, but it brought that up. We're like, oh, the fire truck, we probably should look at that.
Great, thank you.
And in the interest of full disclosure, I am a member of the Historical Society.
I brought that up.
No, it was a great meeting. We really have a great relationship with them. There is like zero issues.
The current MOU, was that administered by the Historical Society, or was it put in place by the district? I'm just curious, is this our letterhead, their letterhead net?
It's not on letterhead.
It's not a letterhead, it's just on paper.
Okay,
And I think it was just a joint agreement when we merged. I'll be honest with you, no one's really
looking at.
we get along so well, we don't really even look at it because there isn't conflict. So that's why we wanted to put the language to force both parties to actually look at the document once in a while.
Isn't it typewriter?
Yeah, it's a typewriter.
They stress that they are extremely happy with the relationship with Felicia at the museum. They couldn't be happier about that. So like Bill said, I think it was more, they had to change, Amy's taken over, and then she was just looking at some things and realized it's been quite a long time since we've, addressed this. So.
All right, thanks for looking into that. I appreciate it.
Yep. The other thing I want to point out is on the memo, it does say that our intention was to bring it to approval to the March 20th board meeting. But based on feedback from the Historical Society, they won't have their board meeting by that date. So we'll tentatively push this to April to give everybody enough time to review. And I did get earlier today, I also got an email back from Dirk as far as his updates to the agreement, which mostly are insurance and indemnification and waiver and things like that. So we'll incorporate those as well.
Comments? Not, and move on to our second opportunity or actually, it's our first opportunity, this recognition of visitors.
One like this is going online, no.
I will announce then that the next Downers Grove Park District Park Board meeting will be held March 20th, 2025 at Recreation Center in the multi-purpose room. We need the executive session.
We do, we have plan acquisition and personnel.
Personnel issues.
Me.
And no need to reconvene in open
No.
session. With somebody. Adjourn to executive session after we convene.
So moved.
Second.
A roll call, please.
Mr. Lot?
Aye.
Mr. Bender?
Aye.
Mr. Dahlstrom? Mr. Katua?
Aye.
Ms. McDonald? Aye.